I think it was in 2019 where I was in New York. I watched how 6 people in a rented room influenced how 2.5 million businesses in the United States were affected. How can I confidently defend this to my leaders, to my engineering team who are going to burn the midnight oil saying, hey, this is absolutely what customers want. I could not. The winners of tomorrow will not be the teams that ship the most features or products. They'll be the teams that waste the least amount of money, least amount of effort, least amount of talent on products customers never needed.
Welcome to the Paalam Labs podcast, where we bridge business strategy and emerging technology one conversation at a time. I'm Tipu Swaran, founder of Paalam Labs and your host for today's conversation. Over the past 20 years, I've had the privilege of working with some of the world's leading Fortune 500 companies, driving digital strategies and large-scale transformations that sit at the intersection of business and technology. I'm passionate about one thing above everything else: turning abstract ideas into actionable frameworks. I do that through my thought leadership on Forbes and through conversations like this one, by sitting down with leaders who are building products that matter. Today, let's talk about the digital product operating model and how it's being fundamentally reimagined. Product management as a discipline traces back to the 1930s. Born at Procter & Gamble, where a young executive named Neil McElroy wrote a memo arguing that each product deserved its own dedicated advocate, someone who owned and lived it. That idea became the brand manager and eventually the product manager. For decades, product management meant physical goods. The discipline was about understanding markets, managing supply chains, and getting the right thing on the right shelf. Then, software changed everything. When products became digital, the rules rewrote themselves. No shelf, no inventory, no physical constraints. Just code and the promise that you could ship something to millions of people overnight. That promise gave birth to a new era of product thinking. There was the assembly line model of plan and sequence. And then it moved into a collaborative model of ship fast, test, and learn from the wreckage. Two different philosophies, two different eras, but with one thing in common. Both were anchored in instinct over evidence. The result? About 80% of software features go essentially unused, which translates into SaaS companies burning about $35 billion in R&D and engineering spend on features their users never touch, just in the US market. That isn't a speed problem. That isn't a talent problem either. It's a decision problem. In the modern, agile, obsessed world, most product teams are playing the wrong game. They are optimizing for speed when the real advantage is certainty. The smartest companies aren't winning by building more. They're winning by deciding on what to build. My guest today has lived this from the inside. Varun Vincent is the founder and CEO of FalconFirst AI, a product decision intelligence platform helping Fortune 500 product teams decide what to build before spending millions building it. After 8 years leading product at JPMorgan Chase, including a platform serving 2.5 million small businesses, he founded FalconFirst AI to solve the one problem no methodology had cracked. How do you decide what to build before you build it? At Paalam Labs, we believe in the power of bridges, connections that close the gap between where things are and where they need to be. Varun is building one of the most important bridges in the product world today between leaders who decide what gets built and the customers who actually live with those decisions. That gap between how product decisions get made today and how they need to be made tomorrow is exactly what we are here to explore. Let's bridge that gap.
I'll be going to California, in 2 days. So I have to get a lot done before I leave. And this is more like a reading trip, I would say. So my sister lives there, and she's blessed with a little girl.
Oh, wow.
And
That's awesome.
she wants me to be the godfather.
Oh, that's sweet.
So it's a big honor for me. And I'm like, I could just fly, or I could take, somebody recommended take the California Zephyr, the Amtrak.
Wait, from
So it's
Chicago to California?
yeah, yeah.
I heard
And
about it. It's a long journey, though.
yeah, it's like a 48-hour journey. And I've been contemplating about it for 2 days. And I thought, you know what? I might do that because I'm going to disconnect all my devices, not take any meetings, but there's a bunch of books on my reading list that I haven't gotten to. I thought I'm going to use that to level up and just think, essentially. And with great views of the Rockies and Nevada and all, I thought that would be a great
Yeah.
thing to do. So I'm excited for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that should be fun. I've heard about that journey because the way it goes through the plains and like you said, the Rockies and stuff like this is supposed to be awesome. Except that I heard it's like a long, long journey, but I'm sure it'll be fun. Like you said, a good you know you can sit back, relax, and just like disconnect, rejuvenate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's essential, right? It is essential. I think one of the things I do every year, I do my annual reflection trip, where every year, at least once or twice a year, I try to disconnect. I go away to a wilderness, to a national park or somewhere where it's just solo trip. And I love the wilderness so much. And I feel that's a good time for me to reset, recalibrate, and may help me understand, all right, am I thinking the right things, doing things the right way, realign priorities?
Yeah, definitely. Once you're back, we'll catch up, and
Yeah.
I want to hear about it. All right. So thanks, Varun. Appreciate it taking your time and joining our podcast. What we want to talk about is how the product world is changing, specifically in relation to the digital products, and how you are helping guide the journey through your ventures and your activities. We will talk about that, but let's get started from just getting understanding of your background. Right, you have been part of big companies. You worked in JPMorgan Chase for a very long time, leading product. So, can you talk a little bit about your journey and more specifically, what gap did you see in your own professional career that you thought, hey, this is something bigger that I want to solve this not just for my company but as a industry as a whole?
Gotcha. So yeah, I worked at JP Morgan for quite a few years, and even before JP Morgan, I was always in product management. From its embryonic stage, ideation to delivery, the product manager's role evolves during the life cycle. And at any point in time, I was managing 4 or 5 different products through different life cycles. The interesting part was, although they are different user journeys, they all connected to the same customer, but different touch points throughout the user journey. One experience I was working on was during the onboarding of a new customer onto the cash management platform. Another one was authentication to improve the security. Another one was perhaps the payment rails. How do they move money? So then there is the billing aspect. So there were multiple teams behind each product. And at one point in time, it was thinking of a new idea to improve authentication versus enhance an existing payment rail. It could be new, it could be optimization or validation of an existing idea, or it could be discovery of a completely new one. So for me, that was so fascinating. I've always liked to bite more than I can chew. And to be able to do all these things was quite exciting for me. And so during the Chase's journey was when I saw the process of discovery and research that really stuck with me. And it was that specific part of the product life cycle, the upstream decisions that pretty much decide the entire course of the product life cycle. And that's why I bring up the product life cycle. I think those decisions, before we say, hey, this is great, let's engage, let's put our capital, let's put our resources, let's put our ego, let's put everything on it, and everybody wants to win. So and that part of the product life cycle is what fascinated me the most, because it felt like everything downstream connected to that one single decision.
Varun had a front row seat to one of the most consequential decisions a product team makes. Not only about what to ship, but what to commit to build in the first place. 8 years, 4 or 5 products at any given time, 2.5 million small businesses on the other end of those decisions. And through it all, one thing kept pulling at him: the decisions made upstream, before the roadmap, before the sprint, before the engineering team burned the midnight oil, those were the decisions that determined everything downstream. It evolved through two very distinct eras, each one a response to the failures of the one before it. But there was one common thread underlying both. Whether it was to plan for a product or ship the product, they were always anchored on human instincts. We are going to talk about something called the Digital Product 3.0 that you're proposing for the future. But for the time being, at least for the audience and the viewers, take us back in time, right? Let's talk about what Product 1.0 and Product 2.0 actually means before we dive into 3.0. So, how do you define Product 1.0, Product 2.0, and how have enterprises been using that over the course of the years? Set the stage for us before we dive deeper into your futuristic model.
Product 1.0 era was perhaps before my time, but product leaders still practice at some previous organizations. Product 1.0 is the waterfall era. This is where let's plan, let's bring the group, plan everything, build everything together, and then hope that we get it right. Clearly, we realized that approach was not sustainable. And this was about the time where building software was still expensive. So these were costly mistakes, expensive mistakes. And so people realized that, inherently, I'd like to think everyone is, pretty smart. Uh, and so realizing that the waterfall method it was an expensive, it introduced the 2.0 era, which I call the fail fast era, where now I can sound a little harsh, but I think this is the nature of reality. In the fail fast era, we are essentially put something out there in front of the customers. We build something quickly, the MVP, put it in front of customers. We learn from that, and then if it doesn't work out, we treat that waste as the price for getting a good product. What is wrong with that approach? One, I am treating my customers as test subjects. Two, that is still an investment. Even though we say MVP, that could be 3 months worth of build. That could still be uh, people staking their reputation behind it. I can share an example, Tipu, when I first had the realization of that upstream decision making of the research and discovery. So we spoke about the waterfall era 1.0, the the fail fast era is the 2.0, and I was at JP Morgan when it was the heart of the fail fast era, the heart of the agile manifesto and other things. But there was one specific experience that gave me a sinking feeling, and I'm happy to go into that if you want to. But that's the 1.0 and 2.0 era. But yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
would love to hear those stories for sure. But one thing you mentioned, waterfall was before your time, right? I don't know if I'm so old or it's only because I've been in so many different companies where they say they are agile but actually operate in a very waterfallish way. But just to make the point that waterfall does exist today, as a lot of companies still they might not agree that they are doing things in a waterfall manner, but it's there. It's there. However, the other point that you made was very key, right? The fail fast. Specifically, you did mention, hey, the MVP takes such a long time to do, and you're not very confident in terms of what you're building. You might be building a great product or a great feature, but the confidence level of that feature is probably not where it needs to be. And then that creates wastage, right? So you did mention you had a story that you felt the pain. So a couple of things around it. You were a product manager, you were a product lead. Is the pain primarily felt by the product leads, or does it go beyond you
Hmm.
into the organization?
I'll get to that question, and you were right. Waterfall still exists. I think it's disguised as hybrid approach. Oh, hybrid. They call it a hybrid agile, but that is there is still waterfall baked into some product teams. But I think it's people hate to admit it. But yes, I think because of the legacy systems and people who have been in the industry 20 to 30 years, who you find people reluctant to change. So yeah, I do agree with the waterfall. There are people doing the waterfall era. See, I genuinely loved my product. I It was because I used to pray to get a job. Doing what I did at JP Morgan. So I absolutely loved it. I always loved biting more than I could chew, and so I was emotionally invested because I it was a great product. It was called Access and Security Manager. It was used by businesses, 2.5 million businesses by the time I left. Uh, 2.5, yeah, these are small and medium sized businesses. And I've actually spoken to businesses, understood how it matters to them, understood their pain points. So I think at the end of the day, the product team, the product manager, product owner, I think they are more vested in the product because they are usually the constant. I've seen, at least in my case, I've seen engineering teams come and go, very rarely though. But I've seen research fold every 3 months, every 6 months. Design every new quarter. I'm working with a new designer. So if these people are variables that are changing every so often, the amount of vested interest they have in the product is not as much as the person whose reputation, whose name is synonymous with the product. So everybody who knew Access and Security Manager knew that I was the person building behind it. So it was important for me for it to get it right. So what happens is you have a design team, you have a research team, you have a product team, and then you have the engineering team. The product and the design and the research, they cater to multiple products. So what happens is if I have an idea or I have something that, excuse me, customers wanted, I have to wait because their bandwidth needs to free up. The design and research needs to free up. So I'm already waiting. I could have an idea on June 23rd. I could be waiting a month, maybe 2 months before design is ready. Sometimes they have to line up. Sometimes I've done the design, I'm waiting for another month for research to free up. If you see, especially now, it is the landscape changes so fast. Waiting 3 months to test a concept, the market has shifted. I'm dealing with the lagging ideas. So that's why that 2.0 era, the product research, design, engineering, I feel all these teams were useful for the 2.0 era where building, shipping was still hard, but not anymore.
Two eras, two different bets. Waterfall bet on planning, Agile bet on fail fast and speed. Neither bet on evidence. Based on industry estimates, between 64 and 80% of software features go essentially unused. That's not a statistic about bad engineers or bad designers. It's a statistic about decisions made too early with too little signal by people under pressure to move fast. So, what does a different approach actually look like? One that doesn't slow you down, but changes what you're confident about before you build. Varun has lived those moments, and what he says makes the case for change undeniable. That's the evidence era. That kind of like sets the stage for what you're proposing, right, around digital product 3.0. Before we get into the details itself, in your own words or in your own terms, how do you explain product 3.0, which I believe is kind of the antidote or solution or the next step of the fail fast, learn fast era that you just mentioned?
So the 3.0 era, it fueled from that one time where I experienced real pain for the first time. I'll give you a little glimpse into that, and then it'll lay the path for the 3.0 era. So I think it was in 2019 where I was in New York. I flew from New York to Chicago. One of the first times I was heavily involved from the beginning to test an idea that I had. It was the same thing, waiting for research and design to coordinate. Maybe it took a few months. We finally got everything together. Then I watched how six people in a rented room influenced how 2.5 million businesses in the United States were affected. When I say affected, their experience with JPMorgan. So, as the product leader of Chase, I was working on this platform on chase.com that people use for their cash management needs. So, in New York, we hired an external agency, an outside research agency, to recruit participants, schedule those interviews in the span of 2 days. So, was sitting across the glass where my researcher was presenting the Figma prototypes, and I'm just listening. 20 minutes into one of the conversations, I'm still trying to figure out, wait, I don't think this person even knows what my product is. They have not even used my product. How did they even get through the agency? How did they get through the interviews? So, and by the third or fourth interview, I all there was clearly something in the prototype that did not make sense to customers. And so I proposed, hey, it looks like clearly this is not something that users want. I think we should remove it before we putting it in front of our other customers, because clearly it is wasting our time and it is throwing these users off a trajectory. It was something that we missed, but that the clients pointed out. The response that I got was, no, this is not how research works. It would contaminate the results. That for me did not make sense. So now we spent the rest of the 2 day speaking about design a flaw in a flawed product, knowing that I am not going to back this. This is not something that I will support shipping to the product. Now again, coming to that small user sample, this was just 6, 7 people in a room. What never made sense to me is, how is this a representative of the 2.5 million businesses? How can I confidently defend this to my leaders, to my engineering team, who are going to burn the midnight oil, saying, "Hey, this is absolutely what customers want." I personally, I could not, and it was that sinking feeling that led to the 3.0 era.
Yeah, the research team has some mechanisms to do certain things, and that kind of like goes into the product team for them to build it. But now you introduce a challenge of, did what the research team provide you, is it actually what the customer needs? That becomes the key. So when you were as a product leader, you could be the CPO or the head of product, whatever be it, or even the product manager, when you want to be able to make those decisions, because the research team has a methodology they go through, right? They go through some surveys, they go through some interviews, they look at the net promoter scores. There is a methodology that they go through. So how do you clearly identify what the customer actually needs? How do you create that validation to understand the gap in the customer's mindset that the development team is building actually means something at the end?
Right. And that is a very fascinating problem to solve. The way I think about it is there are four S's. Uh, you want the right signal. How do you separate the signal from the noise? Scale. It's not six people. How do you reach a representative sample, hundreds of thousands of users, if you have to? The third one is speed. It's no use if this takes you months to get an answer. You need something in hours or days. And the fourth one is spend. You know, how do you cost effectively get all these get the evidence rather than waiting 8 weeks, where the researchers worked for 8 weeks after those interviews, and one person's interpretation of those results, and so it is presented to me. So I feel like that's manufacturing evidence, and I think businesses, customers deserve a more deserve the truth behind, is something going to work or is it not going to work? Do they collectively want it? And so how do you address those four things, those four S's? And I went down the path of trying to understand how it is done today. Maybe there's something I am not privy to that the world knows. And I think this has been around in my head for so many years. So I went from happy hours to conferences. I am asking the same question. Um,
Yeah.
So, how do you guys decide what to build before you build? And I think it was more of a revelation to me at a conference in Utah, where after asking the similar question to a panel of experts, uh, I get a tap on my shoulder, and this guy talks about how he had done over 1,000 research interviews and over 2 decades, and he was basically highlighting that, Varun, the problem is real. And that had revealed to me that this is broken. And the four S's, it's not like people have not tried to solve this before. No, they have been trying to solve. There are people, there are businesses, so many tools out there. Design has a bunch of tools, research has a bunch of tools. A product, I don't think product really has any dedicated tool. The actual decision makers on what gets built, if you think about it from a product standpoint, they have Outlook, they have Jira, maybe Linear. But what is the tool built for product managers? Nothing out there. Engineers have GitHub and a bunch of coding tools now. So product is relying on decisions, on tools used by other teams, other people to make decisions. So if we are able to find something that addresses all of these four aspects: speed, scale, signal, and spend, those four S's, I think that would solve the problem. That is the 3.0 era. It is where it is the evidence era. It is knowing what to build before you build. We are not building something for the product manager, because the 2.0 era was the era where you had multiple roles required to fail fast. With the evidence era, with the evolution, with the maturity of our models, the AI models, there is a new role that we need to be coining. Let's call it the product builder role. I've seen this floated around a few times here and there, but I think essentially, who is a product builder? Because when I was talking to somebody at IBM or even somebody at Chase, they were like, uh, I think this solution that you're building, my bankers could use it, my sales could use it, my account managers, my relationship managers could use it, because it gives it removes the reliance on five different tools that are stitched together today to get to that decision, to get to that manufacture decision. So, in essence, the 3.0 era is the evidence era. It equips the product builder to be able to make defensible decisions on deciding what to build before they build. And this is what we're building at Falcon, where how do we remove the reliance of waiting for months for design to free up? How do I not want to wait for research the bandwidth? How do I do if I have an idea in the morning, by the end of day, not 6 months, not 6 weeks. If I want by the end of day, I want answers not from six people in an artificial lab, for my own customers who have vested interest in the success of the product. I want feedback from those power users at scale by the end of day, and something I can take and put it in front of my leaders. And it's hard to argue with facts.
Signal, scale, speed, and spend. Four constraints that have quietly governed every product decision for decades. What Varun is describing isn't just a better research process, it's a fundamentally different relationship between a product leader and the market. In the instinct era, conviction was the currency. The person with the most influence in the room usually won the roadmap argument. In the evidence era, the data wins the argument. And that changes everything about how product organizations are structured, staffed, and led. With changes in how Product 3.0 is delivered, the product builder is a new responsibility on the horizon. Because the previous era was never built to balance speed and efficiency the market now demands. So, what does it actually take to build products that matter in this new era? Varun has spent years inside that question, and that's exactly where we go next. The first thing that you laid out, I think that's a great way to think about this evidence-based product build. You laid out like signal, scale, speed, and spend, which is fantastic because that kind of provides you the right evidence to decide what you want to build or not. So that's a great framework to think about. The second thing that you said was around fundamentally all these decision makers need data points to be able to make that decision. When you talk about product build, you spoke about multiple different roles, and they all could use the common solution that was being built. So what I want to tie that back to is one of the things I always think about is people confuse market research with market intelligence, right? What the market tells them with what the market could actually use. And that confusion, in a way, kind of overlaps the signal with the noise. What are your thoughts in terms of being able to differentiate? Basically, how do you separate signal from the noise? Because you're hearing so much from all the people that you talk to, from the market, from the customers, from executives. That's where the market research happens, but the market intelligence is basically looking through it and trying to understand what actually means for for the product that I'm building.
Yeah, I think market research shows you the past, how things have worked. Just because it's worked in the past does not mean it's going to work in the future, especially when something as radical as, you know, AI evolution is happening. The intelligence is where this is what defines, a good product manager from a great product manager. This is the thing we call product sense, or understanding intimately what your customers want. And people say, you ask anyone this, and you will get this answer. Hey, how do I build good products or talk to your customers? I think, yeah, that's right. It is talk to customers, but I think that's a very hollow answer, because how do you talk to them at scale in the context within a matter of hours or days? It is just not feasible. I love vibe coding because when I was introduced to vibe coding last year, I was finally able to get what was in my head on a screen. How do I introduce a product for the 3.0 era that solves these pain points? And because I've been thinking about this for so many years, spoken to so many people, I was able to get version 1 using vibe coded. And now I put that in front of over 100 people, because it was essentially a low cost simulation that I was able to do, put it in front of real users and get that feedback quickly. And I was able to shape how the product works. Just vibe coded, nothing, not building. And in fact, that opened the way. Because of that iteration back and forth, I was able to get to a stage where I was talking to somebody from HSBC London, and when I put this demo in front of her, she was like, Varun, I think after this one, I want to do this, this, and this. That was exactly the next step. We've spoken to so many people where people are predicting what is going to come next, and we've already baked that into the flow. That is market intelligence. That is the product sense. Have it pressure tested by the users at scale before spending any money. When I got into a stage where it was not just that, where she was predicting, oh, I this is what comes next. Do you have this in your platform? Yes, we do. How do we do this? It is over here. And and then we got to a stage where it was quite unanimously, I wish I had this right now. That was when I knew, okay, I think we have a product worth building.
So I want to take it to the other end of the spectrum, right? We spoke a lot around how do you define the feature, what's the best evidence-based method to actually go and build a product. Let's take it to the other end and talk a little bit about product sustainability, right? The challenge becomes, and I've seen this a lot, and we speak a lot about AI. I'm sure we'll get to AI in a bit. There's a couple of things that creates these products. Sometimes it's the massive budget. People just want to build a lot. And the other one is hype in the market, where everybody's going after the new shiniest object. So they end up building it. Lots of investments, lots of latest cool, shiny technologies that still end up with a lot of these products fading away from the market. So, what is your diagnosis specifically around how do you help product managers foresee to ensure that what you're building doesn't fade away?
Yeah, fading away. That's a harsh reality.
Mhm.
And I have seen that firsthand, Tipu, where some of my peers, and there are enough examples out there. Google has a graveyard of failed products. Do they lack access? No, they don't. It's the process that is broken. I've seen my peers at Chase as well, extremely intelligent, smart people, but it's just following the process, the traditional research process of, the thing that I explained, focus groups, all those things, user research interviews, just a handful. I've seen teams work for 6 months, 8 months. It was a massive launch party towards the end. 1 year later, I'm looking at the website trying to find that project that features those new products. It's gone. It's not there anymore. They quietly die in silence, and that's fading away. What about all that work the engineering team has put in for 8 months? Take that 8 months, multiply that by five. That is so many years, 4 5 years of uh, of engineers' life with nothing to show because of that fading, because things have faded away. So it really begs the question: how do you build products that matter? One of my hack back then, because I was tired of this. I'm a very impatient man by nature. uh, and because I did not want to wait for research or design, because I know what I'm going to see again in that same room across the glass, I wanted to do it my own way. It was not the most effective, but this is what came to mind, and I just did it. Was one, I had great relationships with a lot of bankers. Each banker had access to 250 to 300 customers. What I did was I was able to work with design, get that prototypes, but instead of waiting for research to hire an external agency, schedule all that, I put the prototypes and I gave it to the bankers. I told them, hey, can you put this in front of your customers? You speak to your customers. Do you have the pulse on what they want? Who has complained about what feature? Who has requested what feature? Uh, and what product they have? You have the pulse. So you can pick your customers, put this in front of them, and get me a sense of what they are feeling. Within a few days, instead of 6 people, I got responses for about 60 to 70 people. And if anything, I feel that laid the blueprint of what we are building at right now at Falcon. When the collective voice said no, it was easy for me to brush it off my shoulders because none of my peers know that I this was a bad idea. I don't have to worry about killing it early. So this is the fail fast without actually building it. Fail fast does not have to be spend months of engineering time. It could be with speaking to your customers, you can fail fast. So by creating that framework, I was able to get those responses quickly within a few days because I do not have to hold my engineering hostage for 3 months before I get an answer. So by creating that framework, that's how at least back then, I was able to create products that are still foundational to Chase today. Because I kept the voice of customer at scale as the heart of the decision making process. I have a point of view, but it was validated at scale. And so another thing about making decisions, about building things that last, that do not fade away, building things that matter, is beyond customers, all the other touch points of a customer's journey, bring them into the fold, into the decision making process. I used to have demos with my research team, ops team, sales team, to see, hey, is there anything we are missing? Because from your perspective, how you work with your customer, is there anything we should be thinking about that we are not? But by bringing these people and collectively and even legal risk, legal controls, compliance, bringing all of these individuals into the decision making process early on, I think that helps build for a great product.
Building products that matter isn't just about knowing what your customer wants. It's about knowing every person in your organization who influences that customer's experience and bringing them into the decision before a single line of code is written. The products that quietly disappear aren't usually killed by bad ideas, they're killed by good ideas that never got pressure tested against the people closest to the customer. Whether it's the bankers, the service teams, the compliance leads, or the ops managers. Varun's instinct to loop in everyone who touches the customer journey isn't just good product practice, it's a preview of what the future product ecosystem actually looks like. One that extends well beyond the product itself. Let's talk about the ecosystem because we spoke about how do you build a product, what are the different things you need to think about it in terms of understanding the signal, ensuring sustainability, and things like that. When you introduce the product needs to operate within an ecosystem, and that ecosystem is everything, right? There's external ecosystem where the product is going to be consumed, and there's also the internal ecosystem to all the different players that you mentioned. So let's first talk about that external. Let's start with the customer. Specifically, when we introduce this product into that particular ecosystem, how do you think about things like compliance, things like regulation, because fundamentally they're going to impact customer trust, customer transparency. So, what are the things that organizations need to keep in mind to be able to appropriately reach the customer in the most effective manner?
Yeah, I'll marry two different concepts. And there's a concept called moonshot ideas, blue sky. Everyone is quite familiar with this. Whenever people come up with an idea, you do not want people to challenge, oh, wait, I don't think that's technically feasible. My first goal is how big would you dream if you knew you wouldn't fail? Operating from that premise, start the ideation, assuming you've done the homework on what problem you're trying to solve and you've already identified what customers you're solving this for. Those will land a lot of these moonshot concepts without the skeptical people's questioning, uh, wait, how do you do this? Going back to F1, I love the concept of those simulations. Those are low cost. The Red Bull team does 8 billion simulations, 8 billion, because they are low cost, but they are baked with feedback loops. Everything feeds into each other. And all of this is before the practice rounds, those three practice rounds are still expensive because this is actual car, actual tires on the racetrack, but we are not racing against each other, but this is just practice trying to see if all those AI feedback loops, the end result, does it make sense? And so those three practice, that feedback feeds into this one, and now this is your final, the race day, that is production, that is rolling out of production. To get to that, those 8 billion simulations, the mirror of that is vibe coding. That's why I love vibe coding. Low cost, I had the most craziest idea. I got a simulation of that, put it in front of legal, risk, compliance, get all the feedback. That is low cost. I can get that, put that in front of them, put it in front of customers. So if it has to be shot down, it will be shot down real quick. So each of those are feedback loops. If legal says, oh, this is not something we allow right now, but if 90% of your customers want this, that is worth pressing on. So it is collecting feedback from all those touch points of the customer, but also internal controls, compliance, marketing. You need to be able to create those feedback loops to get that collective voice together.
Yeah, I really liked how you laid out in terms of all the different players that you need to get this feedback from, get the data points from, and be able to make the right decision for the product. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. The biggest challenge in an organization is going to be around culture, right? What you suggest is great. I do believe, I completely understand it'll work, but the culture challenge is something that organizations need to keep in mind. The reason I'm saying that is a lot of decisions in enterprises is being made by people who hold the biggest budgets or people who have the loudest voice in the room. And you initially pointed out when we started, there are all these companies who have been doing something in a very similar way for 20, 30 years. It's tough to change. Now you are introducing this really new concept, which makes sense, 100%. It definitely makes sense in terms of a very evidence-based mechanism to build a product. What would you recommend organizations who want to follow that path that you're suggesting towards a very evidence based, data driven product build away from the power dynamic that already exists in the organization for, I don't know, a number of years?
Uh, great question, and it ties back. End of the day, we're still dealing with people, from customers who are people to your stakeholders who are people. I'd like to think I've cracked the matrix in terms of relationships and getting to understand people. Because let's put ourselves in the mind of the highest paid voice in the room. They call it the hippo effect, and I've seen that. I'll give you an example. At one point, I had 10 different stakeholders who wanted 10 different things, and I had to decide which one to give my engineering efforts to. Which one do I pick? It was hard to compare apples and oranges. This is commercial bank, this is business bank, this is private bank. This is wires, this is authentication. How do you compare that? And then one is the business credit card. And end of the day, one of the products won because they reached out to my leadership, and that's how they got priority. And I'm like, okay, what is the evidence? Everything is same. We've already seen the wait times and the process. To be able to read 10 different research reports to decide which gets my engineers attention, that was simply not feasible. So I went ahead with the decision only to realize that 6 months later, when I look at the usage metrics, three people were using that product. It broke my heart because I myself was not in a position to challenge that. Because if they had to, it was a new concept. What could I do, rather than running my own research, which I did not have the time or the budget for? They said they've done the research, they showed me some report. So the culture ties back to those voices who are making the decision, because end of the day they also want to propose something. If they are proposing, maybe there is some level of conviction. They have a point of view from their experience which has to be taken into account, from their experience, how customers have reacted to certain products. How do we leverage their point of view? What if they had a tool that easy to use? If they wanted to test with some leaders, they had access to much more customers, but customers who they have direct relationships with. If they are able to create that simulation, put it in front of them, and get that feedback before saying, my team, before saying 15 other teams that report to them that this is something you should build, if they are able to get that within hours, wouldn't that so the culture needs to come not just from bottom up or top down. I think it's from both levels, where where before you commit to anything, what is the evidence? Am I able to defend this? Will this stand scrutiny from my engineers? Will this stand scrutiny from my stakeholders? If somebody else came to me with this idea and I challenged it, will I be able to defend it? So the hippo effect exists today because the tools are fragmented. The effect exists today because you can get away with external research with focus groups. Things are not defensible. The process is broken. Nothing exists today. And the hippo effect exists today because the pain is felt after already spending the money. By that time, I might leave the job or I might move to a different team.
The hippo effect, the highest paid person's opinion. It's one of the most expensive, invisible forces in any product organization. And it thrives precisely because the tools to challenge it don't exist. Culture change in enterprises rarely fails because people don't understand the new way. It fails because the old way is so deeply wired into how decisions get made, how careers get built, and how budgets get justified. Evidence-based product development doesn't just require new tools, it requires new courage. The courage to say, here's what the data shows, and it's different from what you believe. That shift from the loudest voice to the clearest signal is the most underutilized competitive advantage in any product organization. And the ones that learn to cultivate it earliest win. That's where Varun takes us next. So let's talk a little bit about Falcon, because everything that you just explained and what we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes is related to how does this new product 3.0 help organizations going forward, help managers, leaders, chief executives build the right product for the customer. So let's talk about Falcon in terms of what you're building, and two parts to it. If you can talk a little bit about how Falcon as a company is trying to help solve this. And the second thing, we definitely always need to talk about AI. You spoke about so many fragmented tools. The market is being flooded with data and AI tools. So talk to us a little bit about how you see the fragmentation of all these tools, but also the potential of using these different tools to be able to help drive making the right decision for the product.
Yeah. You know, if we wanted to do this 1.5 year ago, it was just not feasible. We actually tried to solve this 4 years ago. I brought a team together before it was called Pigeon Analytics or something, to know the smoke signals, bringing the voice of the customer to the decision maker. But quickly we realized that the technology wasn't ready yet for the way we wanted to solve the problem, for the way I envisioned solving those three S's. There's so many tools out there trying to do the same thing. How do we build this one workflow, one tool uh, that addresses this issue? So think of it this way. What we are building is called the Falcon Terminal, Tipu. FalconFirst is building Falcon Terminal. Falcon Terminal is meant for the product builder. Uh, the product builder could be a researcher, designer, engineer, a product manager, sales, ops, anyone. The 2.0 era has the product, research, design, engineering. In the 3.0 era, you have the product builder. So we call it the PPP framework: pause, pivot, pursue. How do we get to a place where defensively I could say this is an idea you should pause, pivot, or pursue? To do that, coming back to this stage where the product builder could, needs to be able to have a tool that does research, design, and product. So we've created the Falcon terminal that essentially takes the input, all the context. I could describe an idea, give it everything, all the inputs from all the people, or you start with a point of view, assuming it already has product related information. It has the user journeys, it has your user flows, any past research documents, the enterprise context. This is the onboarding that takes care of all that. So the first step is the product. The second is it would wear a research hat and say, all right, Tipu, all that information you've given me, I think what you're trying to do is optimization versus discovery versus validation. And I think we need some core research questions addressed. It will take that, it will wear the expert researcher hat and create this that you will be able to vet or validate or edit. Or you could bring your researcher to look at this and say, hey, can you help polish this? If you have a researcher at your disposal, so we call it the Falcon Research Assistant. This is you know reviewed and planned. We generate these questions, the research questions, and a bunch of other fields that usually a researcher would come up with. So each step builds on each other. So we take the product, then you add the research part, and then together we take, and then we call it the Falcon Design Assistant. This is where it would take those two and build a working prototype. It would build the first simulation. And then it would package all of that with AI. So the first is product, second is research, third is design, and the fourth one is packaging all of that, leveraging AI, turning that into, you can imagine, an AI moderated research. So what we are essentially doing is we are taking what was in my head, we are taking what's in your head, creating a simulation, a working prototype, and turning that into a AI moderated research, and then deploying that within live user journeys only to those users that have vested interest in it. And as enterprises, they have all the information on their customers. They know who is experiencing this problem. They know who have logged in the past 30 days. So we use AI for language, for clustering, for classifying different aspects into themes. When I say themes, this is putting this research in front of customers and have them interact. This is that simulation piece, or this could be that practice rounds. Have them interact through different modalities: voice, screen record, audio, text. Let them, so we are capturing the telemetry, we are capturing the metadata, we are capturing how they're interacting with the so-called idea that I've had in my head. If you have an idea for wires, improving the payment rail of wires, you're only presenting to somebody who just made a wire transfer, somebody who uses wires extensively. So now you're collecting all that feedback through these different modalities. You're also collecting their interaction with this prototype. All of that, let's say that is voice of customer. And AI is used to cluster them, classify them, but then we stop there. We then pass it on to what we call the Falcon engine. This is the math. This is the math that comes up with a recommendation that tells you, based on all this, you should pause, pivot, or pursue with X amount of confidence. That is the proprietary engine, because we don't rely on AI to predict. These are not deterministic. These are not reproducible. But the way we are separating the journey, that makes that hippo effect, that business leader, it makes it defensible because it is reproducible, it is auditable as well. So when now they come to their direct reports or stakeholders, in fact they might have a chip on the shoulder this time, because previously it could collapse under scrutiny, and they might not even bring some great ideas that they have to the table because they know it, they can't defend it. So Falcon helps build not only what the product is but also how it works, because from that feedback that has come, with one click I can consume all that feedback, create the next iteration, again send it to a different audience to avoid feedback fatigue, pressure test it, or because I could have got pause, or I could have got pivot. I've taken the feedback, again pivoted, so I could get pause to a pivot to a pursue. End of the day, what I want is a pursue. That is the signal part. With the confidence, that is how we solve the signal part. The fact that we are able to inject it within live user journeys, and have only customers that have vested interest, only people of power users, all these people have vested interest. So that solves the scale part. We've solved the signal, we've solved the scale. The fact that I'm able to summarize all of this leveraging AI and push it to our Falcon engine, where the math does the PPP, that solves the speed. And the spend, I mean, we know it is, compared to $20,000 spent on one research cycle, getting feedback from six people, throwing $1 million on the product idea, 8 months of engineering work. You can do the math behind that versus whatever this entire Falcon tool costs uh, for inference, significantly less.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I really liked how you connected the the four S's which define your product to the four P's, which is the outcome of what the product
Three
is
piece,
actually. Oh, sorry,
three
three
piece.
P's. Yeah, my mistake. Yeah, three P's from four S's to three P's, which becomes the outcome of the product. So I think that's a fantastic way of looking at how do you build the right feature for the product that the customer will actually use. I'm a huge data driven analytical person, so I always love it when people say, hey, we should make decisions based on evidence and not based on intuition. So if someone wants to do that, right, whether it's a product executive or the product leader, what is one suggestion that might make or break their pursuit of creating an evidence based product management organization?
Yeah. See, there is a clear statistic out there that's hard to argue with, that 80% of the features, software features, essentially go unused. That's roughly about $30 billion of waste every year in public cloud companies alone. So, given that AI has solved coding, meeting technology where it is today, the winners of tomorrow will not be the teams that ship the most features or products. They'll be the teams that waste the least,
Mhm.
least amount of money, least amount of effort, least amount of uh, on talent, least amount of talent on products customers never needed. And that is how we solve this product waste. So where it's not about trying to ship fast, it is getting that decision, getting that getting to that evidence quickly, and that allows, that should not, building the wrong things will not be, should not be the cost of doing business. The teams who decide fast with defensible evidence will define how software gets made. These are the companies that will define whether they earn to stay as leaders in the market. These are the customers who will start essentially with Falcon first.
That's awesome. Appreciate. I think it was a very enlightening discussion. Thanks a lot for laying out the history and what the product 3.0 actually means in the current world and how we build the products. Good luck with your venture. I'll be definitely watching all the great things that you're about to do in the upcoming months and years.
Thank you, Tipu. Yeah, I was telling my friends I was speaking to from Montana, they were asking what interesting things have been happening. I feel this is the most interesting phase of my entire life. And it's quite exciting. I wish I can find a substitute for sleep. Uh,
Yeah, that's
but
that's
thank you.
key.
This is great. Thanks for the experience.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate you being a guest on the podcast, and we'll catch up pretty soon. And that's a wrap on our conversation with Varun Vincent, one of the clearest thinkers on what it actually means to build products that matter in the AI era. Decide before you build, not on instinct, but on evidence. What struck me most about this conversation is how simple the idea is and how hard it is to act on. The industry has been moving in the other direction for decades, and Varun is betting that the tools now exist to finally change that. I want to thank Varun for bringing his experience, his honesty, and his vision to this conversation. If you want to continue the conversation with Varun, his LinkedIn details are on your screen right now. Please feel free to reach out. And if this episode resonated with you, follow Paalam Labs on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. There are a lot more conversations like this one on the way, from product strategy to digital transformation and what it takes to lead in the age of AI. Subscribe, share this episode with a product leader in your network, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.